Hello, my friends, hello, and welcome once again to Stately Vaughan Manor, where Roger and I have returned for the Robert E. Howard Show. It's the Robert E. Howard Show once again, and it's time to talk about Cimmerian September, which returns in just a few weeks. Cimmerian September, this will be the third Cimmerian September, a reading event devoted to Robert E. Howard's great fiction. Robert E. Howard, the greatest pulp writer of all time. This began in 2023 when I just decided, hey, I want to read Conan again. Who wants to read Conan with me? Quite a few people did, and so it became Cimmerian September. Last year, we concentrated on pastiche fiction, which in hindsight might not have been the best idea, Roger, because I read some crappy books last year, but I also read some good stuff. This year, Roger and I are opening it up. It looks like Cimmerian September is here to stay. So, you are welcome to read anything by Robert E. Howard, as much as you like, because Robert E. Howard, man, he wrote a lot of stuff. And we're going to talk about the stuff that he wrote today because I have some recommendations for you. And I've got piles of books here. So, Robert E. Howard, great pulp writer, and amazing to think about it. He wrote everything in a relatively short amount of time. He passed away when he was only 30 years old. It was a young man writing all of these amazing stories in his own unique way. He was just such a fantastic writer. And he was doing this for his living, and he was doing it during the Depression. So he worked hard, and he worked himself into exhaustion quite frequently. And he came out with some great stuff, and a lot of great work in a short amount of time. So let's talk about it. So the best series of books that's available right now is from Ballantine, the Del Rey books, because it has some of his very best stuff. And if you've never read Robert E. Howard before, ever, there are a couple things I would recommend. If you want to get a sense of all of the different things that he wrote, then you can't do any better than the best of Robert E. Howard. This is the best of Robert E. Howard, Volume 1, Crimson Shadows. You can give this a try, and it'll give you an idea of all the different things that Robert E. Howard wrote. And this is packed full of some of his greatest stories. And if you like this, you can get Volume 2, because it is a 2-volume set of best of. So it's fantastic. I've talked about this set of books before. Also, if you're a horror fan, I would really recommend this. This is the horror stories of Robert E. Howard. You've got Solomon Kane there on the cover, because you do have a Solomon Kane story in here with Hills of the Dead. Fantastic collection. Robert E. Howard wrote some dynamite horror stories, and they're all available in here, illustrated. You've got a Bran McMorn story in here with Worms of the Earth. But you also have a bunch of other stories like The Black Stone and Pigeons from Hell and a bunch of other stuff. This is a fantastic collection if you like horror. And, of course, if you've never read Robert E. Howard before, and if you've never read Conan before, of course I am going to recommend that you read Conan, because I do believe that Conan is the best thing that Robert E. Howard ever wrote as far as a series. Just magnificent stories. And the Del Rey set does have the best edition of Conan that's available. A 3-volume set, illustrated, starts with Conan, the coming of Conan, the Cimmerian. Continues with the bloody crown of Conan. This has Hour of the Dragon, the only Conan novel. And then concludes with the conquering sword of Conan. So this is all of Conan, every scrap that Robert E. Howard wrote about this character. Now, a lot of us have already read a lot of Conan the last couple of Cimmerian Septembers. So there's plenty of other stuff to choose from, including some of his great heroes who were not Conan, like Solomon Kane. This is the Savage Tales of Solomon Kane. Solomon Kane is my favorite Robert E. Howard character other than Conan. Such an interesting guy. Solomon Kane, who was a Puritan adventurer who thought of himself as God's avenger, basically. His life was spent righting wrongs, and he was obsessed with righting wrongs. And some great stories in this volume, relatively thin and fantastically illustrated in this edition. This edition is illustrated by Gary Gianni, and it's just fantastic from the title page on. Great stuff. Solomon Kaine, my favorite character other than Conan. Also, of course, Kull, King Kull, Exile of Atlantis. Some fantastic stories in here featuring King Kull, one of Robert E. Howard's most popular characters other than Conan. And he served as a kind of prototype for Conan and the kind of sword and sorcery stories you'd find in Conan. This includes the Shadow Kingdom, often considered the very first real sword and sorcery story. Whether that's true or not, it's a fantastic story. And this is a brilliant volume. Highly recommend Kull. And I also recommend Bran McMorn, The Last King. This is about the Pictish king, Bran McMorn, who united different tribes of the Picts to stand up against the Roman invaders of Britain. And there's some great stories in here. This includes Worms of the Earth, the best Bran McMorn story, and one of the best stories that Robert E. Howard ever wrote. There's some great stories in this volume. This also has included the team-up Kings in the Night with King Kull, which is also, I believe, in the Kull volume. So, great collection, Bran McMorn, The Last King. Highly recommended. The character that I am going to be concentrating on mostly in September, in Cimmerian September, is Borak. Francis Xavier Gordon, also known as Borak. This is Borak and Other Desert Adventures. This is fantastic. And not only has the stories of Francis Xavier Gordon, it also has Kirby O'Donnell and Steve Clarney in here. So all kinds of desert adventures. It's been a long time since I've read these stories, so I'm looking forward to reading these again. This is a nice, big, fat volume. How many pages is this? Over 500 pages, 540 pages about. These are just great, straight adventure stories. Excellent stuff. Highly recommended. Can't wait to read this again, read these stories again. Fantastic stuff. And again, fully illustrated. The final volume that came out in the Del Rey series was this volume. This is Swordwoman and Other Historical Adventures. This includes not only the Dark Agnes stories, but it also includes all of Robert E. Howard's historical fiction. He wrote a lot of historical fiction for the pulps, and it was one of his favorite types of stories to write. And they are all available here in Swordwoman. This actually was not the original cover, or the original intended cover. This is illustrated by John Watkiss, and he actually intended this image to be the cover to the story. And I do think it's a better illustration, but she didn't look quite as badass as she does here, so that's why they switched it. But this is full of great stories. These historical adventures are fantastic. This includes The Shadow of the Vulture, which is one of the greatest Robert E. Howard stories of all, including the character Red Sonja, who became Red Sonja in the comics. It's awesome. So, great stuff in this volume. But that was it. This ended, I think this came out in 2010, if I'm remembering right. And this is the last volume in the Del Rey series. But there was a ton of Robert E. Howard that was not collected in these volumes. And fortunately, the Robert E. Howard Foundation Press came to our rescue and started publishing all of those stories in a fantastic series of books. Originally, these all came out in hardcover, but there are new editions of all of those that are available now in paperback And these are wonderful because they've been updated with some new material, and it's just a wonderful series from the Robert E. Howard Foundation Press. And this volume is Swords of the North, which also includes the complete tales of Cormac MacArt and James Allison. The James Allison stories are really good, really interesting. And it's a nice, big, thick volume full of good stuff. So Swords of the North, highly recommend this. And Robert E. Howard wrote pirate stories. We've got Pirate Adventures, also available from the Robert E. Howard Foundation Press. This has all of the stories that were in that old collection, Black Volmea's Vengeance, and some other stories besides. So all of his pirate stuff is available in Pirate Adventures. So that's really cool. I read this one a few months ago. This is Steve Harrison's Casebook. This is a collection of Robert E. Howard's private eye stories. And if you consider the fact that he was not a fan of private eye stories, it's surprising how really good this volume is. It's an excellent volume of stories. Steve Harrison's Casebook, highly recommend it. Also, we've got Spicy Adventures. This is a collection of stories from the spicy pulps that Robert E. Howard wrote for the Spicies, which was a type of adventure story with a very tame sexual element. Very tame. Humorously so, really. These are not Robert E. Howard's greatest stories, but they're interesting and they're fun. And this just has a wonderful cover. I mean, look at that. That's magnificent and perfect. It's fun stuff. I should read this month for Garb August, because this would really fit right in. Then we've also got the early adventures of El Borak. El Borak was a character that Robert E. Howard created when he was quite young. So these stories are not part of the official El Borak stories that you would find in this volume. Most of the stories in here are incomplete or they're fragments or that kind of thing, but it's really interesting stuff. This volume is packed with really interesting writings from Robert E. Howard, from a very young Robert E. Howard. And again, another great cover. Then we have this book. This is Adventures in Science Fantasy. I was waiting for this one because this book includes one of my favorite Robert E. Howard stories. This has Almuric, which was a Sword and Planet story modeled after the kinds of stories that Edgar Rice Burroughs would write, like the Mars series from Edgar Rice Burroughs. But with a difference. This is a very Robert E. Howard version of that kind of story. The cover illustration is from the story Almuric. And it's just a lot of fun. Very first story I ever read from Robert E. Howard was Almuric. And I was hooked. I had to read everything by Robert E. Howard after reading that. So I'm very glad that the Robert E. Howard Foundation Press reprinted this, because it's awesome. And now you can get it too. And then we have Tales of Weird Menace. This is a nice, thick volume with a bunch of stories from Robert E. Howard. Weird Menace stories, including Skullface. This is Roger's favorite character, Skullface, which was a very pulpy adventure story, kind of modeled on Sax Rohmer's Fu Manchu stories. Although, again, Robert E. Howard took that kind of story and made it his own and probably came up with something better with Skullface. This is really pulpy, really fun, excellent stuff. And this volume is full of stories, weird Menace stories from the pulps. A lot of this stuff probably hasn't been reprinted in a long, long time. So an excellent volume, highly recommend it. And then we've got, let me show this one next. This is Western Tales. Now, you know I love Westerns. And Robert E. Howard loved Westerns as well. And so we have Western Tales, including his weird Western Tales, as you can tell from this cover illustration. So this includes all of Robert E. Howard's Western stories that were not the Breenidge Elkins style of story. These are his like non-humorous, straight Western stories. And they're great. And it's another nice, thick volume. Very glad the Robert E. Howard Foundation Press reprinted this. It's great stuff. And highly recommended. Awesome. If you didn't get around to reading this for June on the Range, now would be a good time in Cimmerian September. And they came out with Volume 1 of Fists of Iron. Fists of Iron is a collection of Robert E. Howard's boxing stories, which most people probably have not read. His boxing stories were actually really important in his career. He wrote a lot of boxing stories. He was a huge boxing fan. He was a boxer himself. So he knew all about it, including what it was like to actually box. And this is going to be a 3-volume set, I believe. And this is Volume 1. Don't have the other 2 volumes yet, but they are forthcoming. But, you know, you could start with this one in September. Excellent stuff. Really interesting. It's really interesting because this has, you know, all the action of his regular adventure stories, and also a lot of the humor that you'll find in stories like the Breenidge Elkins series of stories. So, you know, this is really worth picking up and reading, Fists of Iron. Also, I should mention the Breenidge Elkins stories, which are some of Robert E. Howard's humorous westerns, have not been reprinted yet from the Robert E. Howard Foundation Press, but again, they're forthcoming. They will be out soon, although I don't know that they will be out in September. So you can, though, read Breenidge Elkins. You could probably find an old copy of A Gent from Bear Creek, which was actually his first, if I'm remembering right, his first published book was A Gent from Bear Creek in Britain, which was a collection of Breenidge Elkins stories fixed up. This was a fix-up novel. And they're tremendous fun. And hopefully the Robert E. Howard Foundation Press will have their first volume of their collected Breenidge Elkins stories out soon. It's a lot of fun, Breenidge Elkins. Had to mention that. And then there's a bunch of other really cool stuff, like the collected poetry of Robert E. Howard. Yes, Robert E. Howard was a poet, and he wrote a lot of poetry. It's all available in 3 volumes from the Robert E. Howard Foundation Press. So if you're interested in poetry or just are interested in what Robert E. Howard might have done with poetry, it's all here. And this is great. I've never read all of Robert E. Howard's poetry because it's never been available before in a complete set, but now we have it. So I recommend that. Also, if you're really interested in the author himself, Robert E. Howard, his collected letters are also available now in 3 volumes. He wrote a lot of letters, Robert E. Howard did. Not as many as Lovecraft, but nobody wrote as many letters as Lovecraft. And all those letters are available now. We've got Volume 1, 1923 to 1929, Volume 2, 1930 to 1932, and Volume 3, 1933 to 1936. So this is awesome. And if you're really interested, this is another set of books I highly recommend, A Means to Freedom. So this has all of Robert E. Howard's correspondence with H.P. Lovecraft. So you'll have Lovecraft's letters to Robert E. Howard and Robert E. Howard's letters to Lovecraft in chronological order, so you can follow their conversations, which were really interesting. These come in 2 volumes from Hippocampus Press, 1930 to 1932 and 1933 to 1936. These volumes are edited by S.T. Joshi, David E. Schultz, and Rusty Burke. So highly recommend those. I mean, as you can see, Robert E. Howard, man, he wrote a lot. So there's a lot to choose from for Cimmerian September. And again, you can, if you wish, read Pastiche. I was recently sent by a friend of mine a pastiche novel, Conan the Valorius, which is supposed to be really, really great. He sent me a little letter. This is from my friend Jeff, who has a channel. I should link that down below. Hello, my friend, hello. As Cimmerian September looms, I thought I might entice you to read one last bit of Conan pastiche. This is my favorite non-Howard Conan, although Carl Edward Wagner's Conan the Road of Kings comes very close. I thought you would very much enjoy it and might consider giving it a read this Cimmerian September. It goes quickly and should not take too much of your precious reading time. So I will give this a go in Cimmerian September since Jeff sent me the book. Yeah, so you can read pastiche, and of course, you could read comics as well, like this one. This is Solomon Kaine. Solomon Kaine. You could read comics. There have been a lot of comics published over the years, including the new ones from Heroic Signature and Titan Books. There's a lot of stuff you can choose from for September, and I recommend all of it. You know, read what you like. It's going to be a ton of fun. I will catch you next time.